I held the envelope in my hands, sealed and unmarked, the way they'd returned it to me 3 days ago. My report card, still sealed. They hadn't even looked. I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Mum arrange flowers in a crystal vase, purple orchids, Diane's favourite. Dad sat at the table with his laptop, conference call muted, scrolling through his phone. The morning light fell across the marble countertop where I'd left the envelope originally, hoping someone would notice, hoping someone would care. "These will look perfect in Diane's room," Mum said, adjusting a stem. "She's been so stressed with her art exhibition." Dad glanced up. The gallery called again. They want 3 more pieces by Friday. "Our talented girl." Mum's voice carried that warmth, that pride I'd memorized from a distance. "She works so hard." I set the envelope down again, in the same spot. The paper made no sound against the stone. Neither of them looked up. I went to school. I came home. The envelope remained exactly where I'd placed it, gathering the fine dust that settles on things no one touches. On the 4th day, I opened it myself in my bedroom. Door closed, late afternoon sun cutting through the blinds in straight lines. Perfect marks. Every subject. Highest in my grade for mathematics and science. Scholarship recommendation from 3 teachers. A handwritten note from Principal Torres about my potential. I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer, beneath old notebooks and forgotten assignments. The weight in my chest wasn't sadness anymore. It was something heavier. Something that pressed against my ribs and made breathing feel like a choice I had to remember to make. That evening, Diane came home with paint under her fingernails and exhaustion painted across her face. Mum immediately ushered her to the living room, made her tea, sat beside her with complete attention. "Tell me everything," Mum said. "How did the presentation go?" Dad emerged from his study. "Is our artist home?" They gathered around her like planets orbiting a sun. I watched from the stairs, halfway between my room and their world. Diane's voice filled the space. Her professor loved her work. The gallery owner mentioned connections in New York. Someone important had bought one of her pieces. "We should celebrate," Dad announced. "Dinner at Romano's. Lena, you coming?" He said it without looking toward the stairs. A courtesy question that expected no answer. "I have homework," I said. "Always studying." Mum's voice floated up, absent and automatic. "Don't stay up too late." They left within 20 minutes. I heard Mum's laughter through the closing door, Dad's proud voice asking Diane about her next project. Then silence. The house settled into itself, familiar and cold. I went to the kitchen. The envelope still sat on the counter. I picked it up, held it for a moment, then placed it in the recycling bin, beneath vegetable peelings and coffee grounds. Nobody noticed. Not that day. Not ever. The pattern continued through October, through November. Each report card came home in a sealed envelope. Each one I placed somewhere visible. The kitchen counter, the dining table, once on Dad's desk. Each one eventually found its way back to me, unopened, or I filed it away myself after days of being ignored. "Did you get your progress report?" a teacher asked me once. "Yes," I said. "Did your parents sign it?" "They're very busy." The teacher looked at me with something that might have been pity or might have been understanding. She didn't push. Nobody ever pushed. At home, dinners became a routine I could predict down to the minute. We'd sit. Mum would ask Diane about her day. Diane would talk about her art classes, her projects, her plans. Dad would contribute thoughts about Diane's future, connections he could make, opportunities he'd researched. Then, almost as an afterthought, someone would glance my way. "School good, Lena?" "Yes." "Great." And the conversation would flow back to Diane like water finding its natural course. I started timing it. Diane's portions of dinner conversation averaged 43 minutes. Mine averaged 2. I kept a journal of it, writing down the numbers, watching the disparity grow into something undeniable. 43 to 2. 45 to 3. 51-1. The numbers didn't make me angry. They made me tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. Christmas came. The tree went up, covered in ornaments that told the story of Diane's childhood. Her baby handprints, school photos from every year, achievements memorialized in ceramic and glass. I looked for myself in the ornaments and found 3. A generic baby's first Christmas that could have been anyone's. A kindergarten photo. Nothing after age 6. "We should get new ornaments," I said at dinner one night. "These are family treasures," Mom said, not understanding. I didn't explain. I was learning that some things couldn't be explained to people who didn't want to see. The headache started in January. Small at first, manageable. I took aspirin and continued with my schoolwork. By February, they'd grown worse. Sharp pains that made me close my eyes in the middle of class, that sent me to bed early, while my family gathered downstairs to watch Diane's favourite movies. "You okay?" Diane asked once, finding me in the darkened hallway holding my head. "Fine, just tired." "You should tell Mum." "She's busy." Diane looked at me strangely, but she didn't argue. She went back downstairs where Mum was making popcorn and Dad was queuing up a film about artists in Paris. The pain got worse. I started missing school. When I stayed home, Mum would check on me once in the morning, leave medicine on my nightstand, and then return to her routine. She had book club, she had lunch with friends, she had Diane's college preparation to manage. "Feeling better?" She'd ask at dinner if I came down. "A bit." Good. Rest helps. In March, I collapsed in the school hallway. The nurse called my parents. Mum arrived 2 hours later, apologetic. I was helping Diane with her portfolio submission. "The deadline is today. Are you all right?" I was lying on a cot in the nurse's office, the fluorescent lights making my head throb. "The nurse thinks she should see a doctor," the nurse said, speaking for me. "The headaches are concerning." "I'll make an appointment," Mum said. "Can she go home now?" She could. She did. The appointment got scheduled for 2 weeks out, then rescheduled because it conflicted with Diane's gallery showing, then rescheduled again. By the time I saw a doctor, it was late April. He ordered tests. The tests came back concerning. More tests were ordered. I went to appointments alone, taking the bus, filling out paperwork myself because Mum was always helping Diane with something urgent. "We need to discuss your results," the doctor said in early May. "Is your mother here?" She couldn't make it. He hesitated. "You're 17. I shouldn't discuss this without a parent present." "Please," I said. "Just tell me." He told me. Medical terminology that boiled down to something wrong with my heart. Stress-induced cardiomyopathy, complicated by other factors. Treatable if caught early, dangerous if left alone. I'd left it alone for months. "You need to reduce stress significantly. This condition, it's serious. Your heart is literally breaking down from strain." I almost laughed. The irony was too perfect. "I'll tell my parents," I said. I didn't tell them. I couldn't find the words, and more than that, I couldn't find the moment. Every conversation was filled with Diane's college decisions, Diane's scholarship offers, Diane's future spreading out like a red carpet. My future was shrinking. I could feel it. The tightness in my chest that wasn't just emotion anymore. The exhaustion that pulled at me like gravity. The next report card came in late May. Perfect marks again, despite everything. Despite the absences and the pain and the appointments I went to alone. I brought it home and placed it on the kitchen counter. Mum picked it up, set it on top of the mail without opening it, and went to answer her phone. Diane's college counsellor had news. The envelope sat there for a week. Then 2. By the 3rd week, I couldn't remember where it had ended up. Somewhere in the shuffle of their lives, my achievement had been misplaced. I stopped looking for it. June brought graduation for Diane, Parties, celebrations, relatives flying in from across the country. The house filled with people congratulating her, praising her, predicting her success. "And Lena?" an uncle asked. "What year are you?" "Junior," I said. "One more year." "Ah, well, Diane's the star of the family, isn't she?" He meant it kindly. That was the worst part. Nobody meant harm. They simply couldn't see past the brightness of Diane's light to notice the shadow I'd become. The chest pains got worse after graduation. I'd lie in bed at night, hand pressed to my heart, feeling it stutter and skip. I should have gone back to the doctor. I should have told someone. But telling someone meant admitting I needed help. And needing help meant admitting I couldn't handle everything alone. And if I admitted that, what would be left of me? The quiet daughter who didn't need anything was the only role I knew how to play. Summer passed in a blur. Diane prepared to leave for Northwestern. The house revolved around her departure, shopping trips, planning sessions, tearful conversations about how much they'd miss her. I spent most of July in my room, managing the pain with medication I'd refilled myself, forging the signature on the prescription forms because Mum kept forgetting to sign them. In August, we drove Diane to college. 6 hours in the car, my parents in the front seat talking non-stop about Diane's future. Diane beside me in the back, vibrant and alive and deserving of every good thing. I looked out the window and felt my heart skip. Skip again. "You okay?" Diane whispered. "Fine." "You're pale." "Car sick." She accepted this. Everyone always accepted my simple explanations, because complex ones required attention they weren't prepared to give. We moved Diane into her dorm. Mum cried. Dad took 1,000 photos. They had dinner at a nice restaurant near campus. The 4 of us. One last family meal before Diane's new life began. "To Diane," Dad said, raising his glass, "we're so proud of who you've become." "To our brilliant girl," Mum added. They drank. I sipped water because alcohol made the medication less effective. "Lena will be here soon enough," Diane said, trying to include me. 2 more years, and you'll be starting college too." "Maybe," I said. 2 years felt impossibly far away. 2 weeks felt impossibly far away. We drove home the next day. The house felt enormous without Diane. Empty in a way that had nothing to do with physical space. Mum wandered Diane's room, touching her things. Dad called her that evening, then twice the next day, checking in. Nobody checked on me. School started, senior year, I went through the motions. Classes, homework, college preparation that I did alone because my parents were too busy adjusting to Diane's absence to notice I was preparing for my own departure. The first report card of senior year came in October. I brought it home out of habit more than hope. Mum was on the phone with Diane, laughing about something. I set the envelope on the counter and went upstairs. 3 days later, I found it in the junk drawer, still sealed, buried under takeout menus and loose batteries. I stood there holding it, this envelope that contained proof of my perfect grades, my continued excellence, my persistent existence. And I felt nothing. Not hurt, not anger, just a vast, empty nothing where feelings used to live. I put it back in the drawer. That night I lay in bed and felt my heart skip. Skip again, stutter, stop. The pain was sharp, then dull, then nothing at all. The ceiling above my bed had a crack I'd never noticed. It ran from the corner like a river seeking the sea. I traced it with my eyes, memorizing the path while my heartbeat stuttered and slowed. I thought about the report card in the junk drawer. I thought about Diane's room down the hall, empty now, but still filled with evidence of love. I thought about all the envelopes I'd carried home, all the achievements I'd mentioned in passing, all the moments I'd waited for someone to ask me about my day, my life, my heart that was literally breaking from being unseen. My chest tightened. The pain spread. I thought, this is how I die. Alone in my room, unseen until the morning. I closed my eyes. The darkness felt like relief. I opened my eyes to my bedroom ceiling, the same crack, the same morning light, but something fundamental had shifted. I knew this moment. I'd lived it before. My phone showed the date, September the 3rd, 3 years earlier. I sat up slowly, my hands steady, my breathing even. No pain, no panic, just clarity that cut through everything like glass. I was 14 again. Diane was 17. Andy remembered everything, every ignored achievement, every sealed envelope, every dinner I'd eaten alone. I remembered dying in my bed at 17, my heart giving out from stress and loneliness that had compounded like interest. And I remembered what came after this September morning. The start of high school, the beginning of my desperate attempts to be seen, the acceleration of my invisibility. But not this time. I got dressed in silence. Simple clothes, nothing that drew attention. I went downstairs to find Mum making Diane's special breakfast, blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup. "Morning, sweetie," Mum said, not looking up. "There's cereal in the pantry." "I'm fine," I said. My voice sounded different to my own ears. Calmer. Detached. Diane has her first day of senior year. So exciting. Mum flipped a pancake with practiced precision. "Your first day of high school too, I suppose. Do you have everything you need?" "Yes." "Good. Be ready to leave in 20 minutes. I poured myself water and drank it standing by the sink. Diane appeared, already dressed impeccably, her hair perfect. Mum immediately shifted all attention to her, asking about her schedule, her classes, her plans for college applications. I finished my water. I left for school alone, walking the 15 minutes, instead of waiting for the ride that would centre entirely on Diane's needs. The first day unfolded exactly as I remembered. Same faces, same introductions, same teachers. But I moved through it differently. I didn't volunteer constantly. I didn't seek validation. I did my work with quiet precision and saved my energy for myself. When I got home, Mum was in Diane's room, helping her organise her senior year art portfolio. I went to my room, closed the door, and began mapping out my next 3 years. I would excel, but I would do it for myself now, not for them. The first report card of high school arrived in October. I brought it home, looked at the sealed envelope, and felt nothing. No hope, no expectation, just recognition of what it was. Piece of paper that measured my worth in a language my family didn't speak. I opened it myself. Perfect marks, scholarship track, advanced placement recommendations. I filed it in my desk drawer and didn't mention it at dinner. "How's school?" Dad asked, his routine question. "Fine." "Good." He returned to discussing Diane's college essay with Mum. I ate my dinner and excused myself. 3 days later, Mum found the opened envelope on my desk while looking for a book she'd left in my room. "Oh, your report card came. Everything okay at school?" "Perfect marks," I said, not looking up from my homework. "Scholarship track." "That's nice, honey. Keep it up." She set it down and left. The envelope stayed on my desk for 2 weeks before I filed it away with all the other evidence of my invisible excellence. By winter, I'd stopped mentioning school entirely. I did my work. I excelled. I came home. My teachers praised me. My counsellor called me exceptional. And at home, I became invisible by choice rather than circumstance. It felt like power. I started building a life they couldn't see. I opened my own bank account with money from tutoring jobs I took after school. I researched scholarships and programs that would fund my education without their involvement. I learned to forge Mum's signature on permission slips and school forms because getting her actual signature meant waiting for moments of attention that never came. I became self-sufficient out of necessity. And in that self-sufficiency, I found something unexpected: freedom. Diane got into Northwestern with a full scholarship. The house erupted in celebration. Catered dinner, extended family, Champagne toasts. I sat at the edge of the gathering, watching my parents glow with pride, and I felt nothing but quiet satisfaction that I knew my path wouldn't require their involvement. "Your turn soon," an aunt said to me. "Are you excited for college?" "I have 3 more years," I said. "Oh." She lost interest immediately, turning back to Diane. "Tell me more about the art program." I slipped away to my room and updated my spreadsheet of scholarship deadlines and application requirements. Let them celebrate Diane. I was building something they couldn't diminish with their absence. Sophomore year began. I joined the robotics team, not because I thought my parents would care, but because I wanted to. I entered mathematics competitions. I started tutoring younger students for extra money. I built a life that existed entirely outside my family's awareness. In November, I won a regional science competition. $5,000 prize. Local news, coverage, my name in the paper. I came home with the trophy and the certificate and the oversized check. Mum was helping Diane pack for a college art workshop. "I won the regional science fair," I said, standing in the doorway with my arms full. Mum glanced over. "That's wonderful, honey." Her eyes were already back on Diane's suitcase. "Make sure you pack your good brushes, sweetie." Dad came downstairs. "Lena, can you keep it down? Diane needs to focus on preparing for this workshop. It's a big opportunity." I looked at the trophy in my hands, heavy glass and metal. My name engraved on the base alongside the words "first place" and "excellence in scientific research." I took it to my room and put it on my shelf between my books. The $5,000 check I deposited myself into my private account. I watched the balance grow and felt something I'd never felt from their praise. Actual security. At dinner that night, they discussed Diane's workshop, her professors, her opportunities, her connections in the art world. "How was everyone's day?" Dad asked eventually, the routine question. "Fine," I said. "Good. Diane, did you remember to email that gallery owner?" The conversation moved on. I ate my food and calculated how many more tutoring sessions I needed to reach my savings goal. Later that week, a reporter from the local paper called the house. Mum answered, "Yes, this is Lena's mother. What's this about?" I watched from the stairs as Mum's expression shifted. "A feature on young scientists?" "Oh, yes, she mentioned winning something." A pause. "Of course, we're proud, very proud." She scheduled an interview without asking me. The reporter came to our house the following Tuesday. Mum had cleaned and dressed up, suddenly eager to present as the supportive parent. "Tell us about Lena's achievement," the reporter said, camera ready. "We're incredibly proud," Mum said. She's always been so dedicated to her studies." "Were you there when she won?" A pause. A small one, but I caught it. "We had a prior commitment, but we celebrated with her afterward." The lie was smooth, practiced. I wondered how many times she'd lied about being present in my life without me knowing. The interview continued. They asked me about my research, my process, my inspiration. I answered honestly, talking about the hours I'd spent alone in the school lab, the problems I'd solved without guidance, the victory I'd experienced in a room full of strangers while my parents helped my sister pack. "Do your parents support your scientific interests?" the reporter asked. "They support me in their own way," I said. "They're very busy." Mum's smile tightened. The article ran the following week. My photo on the front page of the local section. My words quoted clearly. "They're very busy." Mum didn't speak to me for 2 days. Not in anger, she wasn't capable of being angry with me. In something else. Discomfort, maybe. Or recognition. On the 3rd day, she found me in my room doing homework. "That article, she started. "What about it?" "You made it sound like we don't care about your achievements." I looked up from my calculus textbook. "Do you?" "Of course we do. You're our daughter." "What was my research project about?" Silence. "What topic did I research for the science fair, Mum?" Something with Science? Math? Sustainable energy conversion through bioengineered algae systems. She blinked. That's very impressive. You never asked. You never told me. I did. 3 times. You were helping Diane each time. Mum sat down on my bed, deflating. Lena, I don't mean to. Diane just needs so much support right now. College applications are stressful. I know. I'll be doing them alone in 2 years. We'll help you. No, I said quietly. You won't, and that's okay. I'm learning to help myself. She left my room with tears in her eyes. I returned to my homework. Nothing changed. Junior year, I'd accumulated 7 academic awards, 3 scholarship offers, and a published paper in a youth mathematics journal. I kept everything in my room, filed and organised. A record of achievement that no one in my house had witnessed. My college counsellor called me into her office in March. Lena, your academic record is exceptional. I'm talking Ivy League potential. MIT, Stanford, Caltech, schools that could set you up for life. She looked at me with careful attention. But I need to ask, do your parents know about your accomplishments? For applications, we'll need their involvement. Financial information at minimum. They're very busy, I said. I understand, but these are important decisions, life-changing decisions. You need their support. I'll handle it, she hesitated. I'd like to meet with them, to discuss your options. You're one of the most remarkable students I've seen in 20 years, Lena. I want to make sure you have every opportunity. Will you ask them to come in? I'll let them know, I said. I didn't tell them. I researched emancipation laws, financial independence requirements, every possible path to college that didn't require parental involvement. 2 weeks later, my counsellor called at the house. Mum answered. I listened from the kitchen as Mum's voice shifted from confused to surprised to something that might have been pride or might have been embarrassment. MIT, Stanford, Yes, we know she's a good student. What? Published? I'm sorry, could you repeat that? The conversation lasted 15 minutes. When Mum hung up, she found me at the kitchen table doing homework. Your counsellor called. I know. She says you're exceptional, that colleges are already looking at you, that you've published research. Yes? Why didn't you tell us? I looked at her directly. I did, multiple times. You were busy. Lena, it's fine, Mum. I've handled it myself. Like I handle everything. That's not fair. Isn't it? She just couldn't answer. The truth was too heavy to deny. That evening, she gathered Dad and she sat me down for a conversation that came 2 years too late. We want to be involved, Dad said. In your college process, in your decisions. Why? The question threw him. Because we're your parents. You're Diane's parents, I corrected. You're my providers. There's a difference. That's a horrible thing to say, Mum whispered. It's true, though. You provide for me. Food, shelter, basic necessities. But parenting, involvement, interest, those are for Diane. They tried to argue. They listed ways they'd been present, but each example was shallow, times they'd been physically present while emotionally absent, times they'd asked surface questions without listening to answers. I let them talk themselves out. Then I said, I appreciate you wanting to help now, but I've already done the research. I know my options. I'll let you know if I need something from you. Translation. I wouldn't need anything from them. I'd make sure of it. Senior year began. Diane was thriving at Northwestern, and my parents planned monthly visits to see her. I stayed home. I perfected my college applications alone. I wrote essays about self-reliance and finding strength in solitude. I requested recommendation letters from teachers who actually knew me. My early admission acceptance to MIT arrived in December. Full scholarship, research position, honours program invitation. I held the envelope, thick and heavy, the kind that meant yes. And I thought about being 14 again, holding my first report card, waiting for someone to care. I opened it in my room. I read every page. I let myself feel the pride they would never share because they'd never earned the right to share it. Then I put it in my desk drawer with all the others. Christmas break came. Diane returned home, and the house transformed. Decorations, special meals, constant attention. I watched from my familiar distance, but now it felt like watching a play I'd already seen. I knew every line, every gesture, every moment where I'd be forgotten. On Christmas Eve, we gathered in the living room, gifts piled beneath the tree, most of them with Diane's name. "Lena, this is for you," Mum said, handing me a wrapped box. Inside, a generic journal and a gift card to a bookstore. The same thing they'd given me every year. "Thank you," I said. Diane opened her gifts. Professional art supplies, expensive equipment, a new laptop, a trip to Europe. "You spoil me," she laughed. "You deserve it," Dad replied. "You work so hard. We're so proud of who you're becoming." I excused myself early. In my room, I wrapped my mighty acceptance letter. I wrote on the tag, "To the Lena I became, from the Lena who survived." I opened it myself at midnight in the silence of my room, and I let myself feel everything they would never know to ask about. January brought the moment I'd been preparing for. College acceptance. Season reached its peak. My parents' friends began asking about where their children had gotten in. At a dinner party they hosted, the conversation turned inevitably to college decisions. "Diane's doing so well at Northwestern," Mum told everyone. "Gallery shows, important connections. She's interning with a renowned artist this summer." "She's always been remarkable," someone said. "Such talent. And Lena? Where is she applying?" "Oh, the usual places," Dad said vaguely. "She's a good student." I stood in the kitchen doorway, 17 again, but different. Calm, prepared, holding all the power they didn't know I'd accumulated. "I got into MIT," I said clearly. "Full scholarship, early admission to the honours programme." The room went silent. "What?" Mum turned to look at me fully, perhaps for the first time in years. "MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I was accepted in December." "Why didn't you tell us?" Dad's voice carried something that might have been surprise or might have been annoyance at being caught unaware in front of their friends. "I did. You said it was good," and went back to discussing Diane's gallery opening. I watched the memory try to surface in their minds and fail. That's wonderful, honey. MIT is very prestigious." Mum's voice had changed. Public voice. Performance voice. "Yes, they offered me a research position as well, based on my published work in mathematics and bioengineering." "Published work?" Dad stood up. "You published something?" 3 papers. The most recent one was in the Journal of Youth Mathematical Research. It's been cited 72 times by other researchers. Their guest looked between my parents and me, understanding dawning on faces that had known our family for years. "Lena, we should talk about this," Mum started. "There's nothing to talk about. I've been accepted. I've secured full funding. I've arranged my housing. I've completed all necessary paperwork. I leave in August." "You did all of this alone?" Dad's voice had changed. Something in it that I'd never heard directed at me before. Respect, maybe, or regret. "Yes." "Why didn't you come to us?" I looked at him directly, steadily. "I did. Every time. You were busy." The dinner party ended early. The guests left with awkward goodbyes and sympathetic looks that I didn't need and my parents didn't deserve. After everyone left, my parents sat me down in the living room. Diane was on speakerphone, called back from Northwestern for this sudden family emergency meeting. "Lena, we want to understand," Mum said. Her voice was small, uncertain. MIT, research, publications. How do we not know about any of this? I could have listed every instance, every report card they'd returned unopened, every achievement I'd mentioned in passing that had been met with distraction, every dinner where my day was summarized as fine because they'd never asked for more, every moment I'd waited for them to see me. Instead, I said, "You never opened my report cards." Silence. "What?" Dad's voice was quiet. "My report cards. You never opened them. Any of them. I'd bring them home and they'd sit on the counter for days. Or you'd hand them back to me sealed, or they'd end up in junk drawers. You never once looked." "That's not..." Mum stopped. I watched her face as she tried to remember, failed to remember, realised she couldn't remember because there was nothing to remember. "I have every single one in my room, most still sealed. The ones I opened myself so I could see my own grades." "Lena, if you had told us they were important," Dad started. "I won a regional science competition sophomore year, $5,000, my name in the paper. A reporter came to our house. I told you at dinner the day I won. You told me to keep it down because Diane was preparing for her workshop." Diane's voice came through the phone, small and uncertain. "Lena, I didn't know." "You didn't need to know. None of you needed to know. You had each other. You had your gallery openings and college visits and proud parent moments. I had myself, and I learned that was enough." "That's not fair," Mum said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? When was my last report card? What grade am I in? What's my GPA? What are my SAT scores?" Silence answered every question. "I'm not angry," I said, and I meant it. The anger had burned away in my first life, in the 3 years of this second chance. What remained was clarity. "I'm just done waiting for you to notice I exist." "We're your parents," Dad said. "We love you. We should have been there. We should have..." "Yes," I agreed. "You should have, but you weren't. And I learned to build my life without you. MIT isn't asking about my family. They're asking about my work, my potential, my achievements, things I earned completely alone." "We want to do better," Mum said, crying now. "Please let us do better." "You can try," I said, "but you can't undo 3 years of absence with sudden attention now that other people know. You're not proud of me. You're embarrassed you didn't know enough about me to be proud earlier." The words landed like stones in still water. Diane's voice came through the phone. "Lena, I'm sorry, I took up all the space. I didn't mean to, I didn't know." "It's not your fault," I told her. "You were just living your life, being yourself. They chose where to direct their attention. That's not on you." The weeks that followed were strange. My parents tried. They asked about my research. They wanted to hear about MIT. They attempted to reconstruct 3 years of my life they'd lived through but never witnessed. I answered their questions politely. I showed them my awards when they asked. I let them read my published papers, though they struggled to understand the mathematics and the science. "You're brilliant," Mum said one evening, holding my trophy from the regional competition like it was precious, like it had always been precious to her. "When did you get so brilliant?" "I've always been this way," I told her gently. "You were just looking elsewhere." She cried. Dad tried to comfort her. Diane called every day, apologising for things that weren't her fault, trying to bridge a gap she hadn't created. But the distance wasn't something that could be resolved with belated attention. It was structural, built into the foundation of who we were as a family. They'd raised one daughter with eyes wide open and pride unconcealed. They'd raised another in the peripheral vision of their awareness. I didn't hate them for it. Hate would require caring about their approval in a way I'd trained myself not to. Spring came. College decision day approached, and my parents wanted to make a show of celebrating my acceptance. They planned a party. They told everyone they knew. They wanted to announce their daughter was going to MIT with the same pride they'd always reserved for Diane's accomplishments. Don't do this, I told them the week before the planned party. We want to celebrate you, Mum said. We're so proud. You're proud now. You're celebrating now because other people know, because your friends know, because it reflects well on you to have a daughter at MIT. That's not true. Where were you when I won my first competition? When I published my first paper? When I was 14 and 15 and 16 and needed someone to care about my life, not just my achievements that make you look good? Dad sat down heavily at the kitchen table. You're right. We failed you. We failed you completely. But we want to do better. Please let us do better. You can't undo 3 years of absence with one party, I said. You can't suddenly decide I'm worth celebrating because I got into a prestigious school. Then, what do you want from us? His voice cracked. I thought about my first life, dying in my room with my heart giving out from accumulated neglect. I thought about waking up at 14 with a second chance and choosing to stop seeking their validation. I thought about the girl I'd been and the woman I'd become, built entirely from my own determination. Nothing, I said. I don't want anything from you anymore. I wanted you to see me when I needed it, but I don't need it anymore. I built myself without you. And that's not something you can fix by throwing a party now. They cancelled the party. Instead, they asked if we could have dinner together. Just the 4 of us. We went to Romano's, the restaurant they'd taken Diane to celebrate every achievement. I sat across from my parents, Diane beside me, and we ordered food in uncomfortable silence. I'm sorry, Diane said finally. I took up all the space in this family. I didn't mean to, but I did, and I'm sorry you were left in the shadows. It's not your fault, I told her again. You were the child they saw. I was just also there. That's a horrible thing to say, Mum whispered. We love you. I know you do, but love without attention is just words. You loved an idea of me. The quiet, easy daughter who didn't need anything. But I did need things. I needed to be seen, and when you didn't see me, I learned to see myself. So, in a strange way, thank you. You taught me I only need my own approval. We want to know you now, Dad said. The real you, if you'll let us. I looked at them, really looked. They'd aged in ways I hadn't noticed during my 3 years of building my life in the margins of theirs. Mum's hair had more grey. Dad's face carried new lines. They looked smaller somehow, diminished by their own recognition of what they'd missed. I'll be at MIT in 4 months, I said. You'll call me sometimes. We'll talk. But it won't be like it was with Diane because we don't have that foundation. You can't build a relationship backward. You can't undo years of not knowing someone. But we can try, Mum said. We can start from here, from this moment. Please let us try. I considered this. In my first life, I died waiting for this conversation. In this life, I'd stopped waiting and built myself anyway. Maybe there was room for something new, not forgiveness. That implied they'd done something malicious. Just acceptance. They'd failed me. I'd survived their failure. We could coexist in that truth. We can try, I agreed, but I'm not waiting anymore. For anything, from anyone. I'm living my life on my terms. You can be part of it if you want, but you're not the centre of it. Not anymore. Graduation came in June. I delivered the valedictorian speech talking about self-reliance and finding your own path and building yourself from the ground up when no foundation is provided. My parents sat in the front row, crying. Diane stood to applaud, proud and sad in equal measure. After the ceremony, my counsellor found me. Your speech was beautiful, and I wanted you to know I called MIT. Told them they were getting the most remarkable student I'd ever taught. Someone who achieved everything with half the support most students have. Thank you, I said, for seeing me when others didn't. You made it impossible not to. You shine, Lena. even when no one's watching. That evening, my parents took me to dinner. Just us. No extended family, no friends, no audience to perform for. We talked about my plans, my research interests, my hopes for the future. I wish I could go back, Mum said quietly. Do it all differently. See you the way I should have seen you from the beginning. You can't go back, I said. Neither can I, in a way, but you can do better now. Will you call us? Dad asked. From MIT? Let us be part of your life going forward. Yes, but on my terms, when I want to share, not when you suddenly remember to ask. When I need something, not when you need to feel like good parents. They nodded. They understood, in the way people understand when they've lost something they didn't. No, they had until it was gone. August arrived. I packed my things, my awards, my trophies, SARs, my sealed report cards that I'd kept as a reminder of where I'd come from and what I'd overcome. I loaded everything into Dad's car, and we drove to Massachusetts in careful conversation. They helped me move into my dorm. They met my roommate. They took photos. They cried when they said goodbye. We're so proud of you, Mom said, hugging me tight. I know we're late saying it. I know we should have said it years ago, but we're proud. I know, I said, and I'm proud of myself too. That's the difference. That's what I learned. I don't need your pride to validate my achievements anymore. They drove away, and I stood in front of my dorm building, 17 years old in my second life, 20 in the memories of my first. I thought about the girl who'd died in her bed, alone and unseen. I thought about the girl who'd been reborn and chosen to build herself in solitude rather than wait for recognition that would never come. I was neither of those girls anymore. I was the woman who'd learned that being unseen wasn't a tragedy, it was a choice. They had chosen not to see me. I'd chosen to stop needing to be seen by them. And in that mutual choice, I'd found something stronger than their approval. I'd found myself. 4 years later, I graduated from MIT with dual degrees in bioengineering and applied mathematics. 3 research publications that had changed my field. Job offers from companies and research institutions around the world. A PhD program at Stanford waiting for me with full funding. My parents came to the ceremony. So did Diane, who'd become successful in her own right, but had also learned to ask about others, to see beyond her own reflection, to notice when someone was standing in shadows. We had dinner afterward, and we talked easily. Not like a family that had always been close, but like people who'd learned to know each other late, carefully, with respect for the distance that remained. What's next? Dad asked. PhD program, Stanford, full funding and a research fellowship. You've built an incredible life, Mum said. I'm sorry we almost missed it. I'm sorry we did miss so much of it. But you didn't miss all of it, I said. Not entirely. You're here now, that's something. And that was true. They were here. Late but present, imperfect but trying. And I'd learned that sometimes the greatest gift wasn't having people see you from the beginning. It was learning to see yourself so clearly that their absence couldn't diminish you. My phone buzzed. A text from my research advisor. Congratulations, Dr. Lena. You've earned every bit of this. Dr. Lena. The title I'd earned alone, in the silence of their inattention and the power of my own determination. I smiled, not for them, but for myself, for the girl who'd been reborn and had chosen to stop waiting, for the woman who'd built herself from nothing and had learned that the only approval that truly mattered was her own. They returned my report card unread. After Rebirth, I stopped showing them any paper, and in doing so, I'd written my own story, one that didn't need their signature to be real, one that didn't require their validation to be true, one that was mine alone. And that was enough. That was everything.